Hello students, in this video we continue with our chapter 10 of history, new empires and kingdoms. In the previous video we talked about prashastis, how these prashastis were written in form of inscriptions, and there's a very famous prashasti of the king Samudragupta belonging to Gupta dynasty, written by Harisena. And apart from that, we also saw how Guptas now became important rulers. And let us now continue with the chapter. So, Prashastis were written in order to praise the kings and rulers. Most Prashastis also mention ancestors of the ruler. The word genealogies means bloodline or family tree. This one mentions Samudragupta's great grandfather, father, and mother. His mother, Kumar Devi. So, Kumar Devi was the mother of Samudragupta, belonged to the Lichavi Gana, while his father, Chandragupta, was first ruler of the Gupta dynasty to adopt the grand title of Maharaja Dhiraja, a title that Samudragupta also used. So, from these prashastis, we come to know about a lot about the family of King Samudragupta, and the father of Samudragupta was Chandragupta, was the first ruler to use the title Maharaja Dhiraja. Please remember this point. Apart from that, Samudragupta also used the title Maharaja Dhiraja for himself. His great grandfather and grandfather are mentioned simply as Maharajas. It seems as if the family gradually rose to importance. So, with time, these Gupta rulers became very strong, very powerful, and as they became very powerful, they used big titles for to address themselves. For example, earlier they only called themselves as Maharajas, but now they started calling themselves as Maharaja Dhiraja. Vikram Samvat, the era beginning in the 58 BCE, is traditionally associated with Gupta king Chandragupta II, who had founded it as a mark of victory over the Shakas and assumed the title of Vikramaditya. So, the king Chandragupta II of Chandragupta dynasty was also called as Vikramaditya. Now, Samudragupta in turn figures in the genealogies of later rulers of the dynasty, such as his son. Now, the name of Samudragupta's son was Chandragupta II. We know about him from the inscriptions and the coins. He led an expedition to the Western India. He took his army to Western India, where he overcame the last of the Shakas. Shakas were another rulers. According to later belief, his court was full of learned people. And the court of Chandragupta II was full of learned people, and about some of them we will read in next chapter, that is chapter 11. Now, coming to Harshavardhana and Harshacharita. While we can learn about the Gupta rulers from their inscriptions and coins, we can find out about some kings and kings from the biographies. So, what are biographies? Biographies are basically the books which are written in form of story of a particular person. Now, Harshavardhana, who ruled nearly 1400 years ago, was one such ruler. So, we get to know about Harshvardhana from his biography. His court poet, there was a poet in his court whose name was Banabhatta, wrote his biography, and the name of his biography is Harshacharita, and this was written in Sanskrit language. So Harshacharita gives us details about the life of the king Harshavardhana, written by Banabhat. This gives us the genealogy of Harsha. Genealogy means telling us about who was the father of Harshavardhana, his grandfather, his great grandfather. Means genealogy means giving us the whole information about his family tree or his ancestry, and ends with his becoming the king. Xuan Zhang, about whom we read in chapter 9, also spent a lot of time at Harsha's court and left a detailed account of what he saw. So, apart from getting information from Harsha Charita, we also get information about King Harsha, Harshvardhana, from the accounts of Xuan Zhang, who came from China to India. Now, Harsha or Harshavardhana was not the eldest son of his father, but became king of Thanesar. Please remember, this is the capital. This was the capital of Harsha. After both his father and elder brother died, his brother-in-law was the ruler of Kannauj, and he was killed by the ruler of Bengal. Harsha took over the kingdom of Kannauj and led an army against the ruler of Bengal. Although he was successful in the east and conquered Magad and probably Bengal also, he was not as successful elsewhere. He tried to cross the river Narmada to march into the Deccan, but was stopped by a ruler belonging to the Chalukya dynasty known as Pulkeshin II. So if we look at the map here, this is Thanesar. This was the capital of Harsha. Harsha also took over Kannauj. Now from here, he wanted to enter the Deccan, this place, this area, the area where the Narmada river flows. But he was stopped by Pulkeshin II, who was a Chalukya ruler. The Pallavas, Chalukyas, and Pulkeshins Prasasthi. Now we are going to talk about another dynasty of kings, which were Pallavas, Chalukyas, and the king Pulkeshin. The Pallavas and Chalukyas were the most important ruling dynasty in the South India during this time. The kingdom of the Pallavas spread from the region around their capital, Kanchipuram. So please remember, Kanchipuram was the capital of the Pallavas to the Kaveri Delta, where while that of the Chalukyas was centered around the Raichur Doab between the rivers Krishna and Tungabhadra. So the kingdom of Pallavas included the city of Kanchipuram, while the kingdom of Chalukyas was centered around the Raichur Doab, and this lay between the river Krishna and Tungabhadra. Now, Aihole, the capital of the Chalukyas, was an important trading center. It developed as a religious center also, with a number of temples. The Pallavas and Chalukyas frequently raided one another's land. So basically, they were constantly fighting with each other. They raided each other's lands, especially attacking the capital cities, which were prosperous towns. Now, These capital cities of Kanchipuram and Aihole, both of them were very rich cities, very prosperous. So, time to time, sometimes Chalukya rulers used to enter Pallava kingdom, and Pallavas used to enter Chalukya kingdom and raided each other's lands. The best known Chalukya ruler was Pulkeshin II. Please remember the name. He was a Chalukya ruler. And we know about him from a Prashasti. So we have a Prashasti belonging to Pulkeshin II. Now this Prashasti was composed by his court poet Ravi Kriti. Please remember the name. This tells us about his ancestors who traced back through four generations from father to son. Pulkeshin evidently got the kingdom from his uncle. So, if we look at the map, let us trace. So, this was where the Pallavas were, and somewhere here only, here. This is where the Chalukyas were, and this is where the Pallavas were. So then these two were constantly, fighting with each other, and both of these became very important rulers of South India during this time. Now, according to Ravi Kriti, he led expeditions, Pulkeshin too led expeditions along both the west and east coasts. Besides, he checked the advance of Harsha. There is an interesting play of words in the poem. Harsha means happiness. The poet says that after this defeat, after Pulkeshin defeated Harshvardhana or Harsha, Harsha was no longer Harsha. Means Harsha was no longer king, Harsha was no longer happy. Pulkeshin also attacked the Pallava king who took shelter behind the walls of Kanchipuram. So, from this Prashasti, we come to know that Pulkeshin too was a very powerful ruler. But the Chalukya victory was short lived. Ultimately, both the Pallavas and the Chalukyas gave way to new rulers belonging to the Rashtrakuta and Chola dynasty, about whom we'll study in class 7th.